When we hear the word Japan, ultra-modern cities, crystal clear streets, robots, and exquisite traditions come to mind. It seems that this country lives in the future, but beneath that glare lies an unsettling silence. Japan is like a shining skyscraper whose foundation is gradually cracking, quietly, not immediately, but inevitably. We will tell you why a great country, which the whole world considered an example, is now on the verge of slowly disappearing. 25 reasons that are rarely talked about, but which cannot be ignored. 1. The aging of the nation. Japan is a country where more than 30% of the population is over 65 years old. This leads to the collapse of the pension and healthcare systems. There are fewer and fewer employees for every pensioner. As a result, the government spends more than it earns. Emptying of regions. There is a demographic void in rural Japan. Young people leave for the cities, and only the elderly remain in the villages. This leads to closure of schools, hospitals, shops, abandoned houses. There are already more than 8 million of them all over Japan. Youth reduction. Today's youth make up only a small percentage of the population. This leads to the fact that there is no one to replace the aging generation in business, politics, or science. The core of the workforce is shrinking every year. This also means an increased burden on the young. They have to work harder, pay more taxes, and support an increasing number of retirees. Without an influx of young staff, key industries are beginning to suffer. There is no one to introduce new ideas, develop technologies, and drive business forward. If measures are not taken now to stimulate the birth rate and open the doors to young professionals from other countries, this can lead to prolonged economic and cultural stagnation. Debts that you can't hide from. Japan is the leader in public debt among all countries of the world. Today, it exceeds 260% of GDP. This means that the country is living in debt, spending more than it earns, and constantly shifting the financial burden onto the future generation. Yes, debt is mostly domestic, but that doesn't mean it's safe. Any global crisis can cause this fragile system to crack. The next reason is an economy without growth. Since the early 90s, Japan has been suffering from the so-called decade of stagnation, a period when the economy did not grow at all. And although there have been attempts to revive it by printing money and stimulating demand, for example, the Abenomics program, they have had only a temporary effect. In reality, the country is stagnating. The bureaucracy that stifles innovation, Japan is one of the most bureaucratic countries among the developed ones. Imagine this. Many institutions still use fax machines. The faxes, Carl. In the age of digitalization, it's like riding a donkey on a highway. A fax machine is a device for transmitting copies of documents over a telephone line. That's how it works. The paper document is scanned. Its image is converted into a digital signal. The signal is sent through the phone line to another fax machine. There, it is printed again, a copy of the original. Why is it outdated? Today, almost no one uses fax machines because there is email, scanners, cloud storage, Google Drive, Dropbox, etc. But in Japan, faxes are still used in many companies and government agencies, which is considered a symbol of bureaucratic backwardness. There are too many rules, checks, steps, hierarchies. In such an environment, it is difficult to quickly launch new projects or change something at the state level. Unfair system. Women in the shadows. Japanese women are among the most educated in the world, but they hardly participate in the management of the country and companies. Why? Because the patriarchal model still works. A woman should be at home, a man at work. As a result, half of the population simply does not participate in the development of the country. Closeness to the world, Japan remains a rather closed country. There are a few immigrants there, and frankly, they don't really want to see them. Even those foreigners who come often face barriers from language to social isolation. Unlike Canada, the United States, or Germany, Japan cannot compensate for labor shortages through migration. Japanese schools and universities are renowned for their discipline, but in the 21st century, this is no longer an advantage, but a problem. School is cramming, tough exams, and stress. There's little creativity, critical thinking, and almost no entrepreneurial spirit. Young people are taught to be gears, not creators. Work for the sake of work. In Japan, recycling is still considered the norm. People work late, often without vacation. There are even cases of karoshi, death from overwork. Such a culture not only destroys health, but also reduces productivity. It also prevents people from starting families, relaxing, and self-development. This leads to a vicious circle. The more a person works, the less he lives. The working day often does not end even after leaving the office. Employees continue to correspond, participate in mandatory corporate dinners, or simply linger for show, so as not to leave before the boss. As a result, people have neither the time nor the energy for a personal life, which exacerbates the demographic crisis and increases the feeling of inner emptiness. Despite its technological reputation, Japan lags behind the world in IT. They don't have their own Facebook, TikTok, or Google. In the field of startups, artificial intelligence, and platforms, they are inferior to the United States, China, and even South Korea. This is strange for a country where the Walkman was invented and the first bullet train was built. Young people who don't want to live. Increasingly, young Japanese people are choosing solitude. They become hikikomori. They don't leave home. They don't study. They don't work. They have no dreams, no motivation. This is often the result of societal pressure and a lack of flexible options. If an entire generation is afraid to live, this is an alarming signal. Missed leadership in Asia. Japan was once the undisputed leader in Asia. Today, this is no longer the case. China, South Korea, and Singapore are ahead of it in technology, military capabilities, and international diplomacy. And Japan is like a frozen giant that was once great but is afraid to step forward. Too much dependence on the automotive industry. Cars are the heart of the Japanese economy. Toyota, Honda, Nissan, these brands are known all over the world and have long been a symbol of reliability and innovation. But the market is changing. Electric cars, autopilots, and digital ecosystems are coming. The leaders are not those who make cars, but those who create smart platforms on wheels, like Tesla, BYD, and even Apple. Chinese manufacturers are already offering electric cars that are cheaper, more technologically advanced, and faster to upgrade. Japanese companies have been holding on to traditional engines for too long and have been slow to adopt new standards. They risk being left behind if they don't start thinking differently, as tech giants, not just car companies. After all, in the new era, the winner is not the one who collects the bolts, but the one who manages the data, charge, and intelligence. Natural disasters. Japan is one of the most vulnerable countries on the planet. It is located at the junction of 4 tectonic plates, which means that earthquakes, tsunamis, and volcanic eruptions are not uncommon here, but the norm. Add to this the frequent typhoons, seasonal floods, and landslides. Cities suffer from these disasters every year. Transport and logistics are disrupted, houses and factories are destroyed, and people are killed. Major disasters, like the earthquake and tsunami of 2011, leave not only physical wounds, but also economic scars for decades to come. It takes billions of dollars to rebuild, and the fear of a repeat is holding back investment and construction in a number of regions. Combined with the demographic and economic crisis, natural threats are becoming an additional, heavy burden that cannot be eliminated, and which always hangs over the country like a sword of Damocles. Japan shut down most of its nuclear power plants, but the alternative is coal and gas, and all this is an import. While the whole world is switching to green energy, Japan is lagging behind, risking remaining vulnerable to energy. Low military security. According to the Constitution, Japan is a pacifist country. After the Second World War, it was forbidden to have full-fledged armed forces. Formally, it has self-defense forces, but they are limited in functions and capabilities. This made Japan an example of peace and restraint. But in the modern world, such a position becomes vulnerable. Threats are growing all around. The strengthening of China in the South China Sea, aggression from North Korea, growing tension between the United States and Russia, as well as the risk of cyber attacks on infrastructure and energy. Japan has no nuclear weapons, no powerful aircraft carriers, and most high-tech defense systems are American-aid. Japan is literally dependent on the US military umbrella. But will she always be able to count on him? The world is becoming more and more unstable, and independent defense is not a matter of pride, but a matter of survival. Without strategic autonomy, the country remains an observer, even if a thunderstorm is already near. Insufficient preparedness for future shocks. The world is becoming more and more unpredictable. Pandemics, artificial intelligence, climate disasters, new wars, energy crises, these are the so-called black swans, rare but powerful events that change everything in a matter of weeks. And you need to be prepared for them in advance. Japan is adapting slowly. Its bureaucracy does not like sudden movements. Reforms have been delayed for years, and digitalization is lagging behind. Paper documents, fax machines, and physical stamps, hanko, are still actively used in the country, even in emergency situations. This not only slows down the reaction, but also makes the system inflexible. Whether it's a new pandemic, an explosion of technological unemployment due to AI, or a global conflict, Japan may find itself in a stupor. And this is especially dangerous for a country that already has a demographic, energy, and economic crisis. Japan is a country with a great past, but it faces too many challenges. Debts, stagnation, disasters, backwardness. All this cannot be ignored. To avoid becoming just a memory, Japan needs to wake up before it's too late.